It's my great honor to have this special panel with the world-renowned scholars in this field. And actually, I'm a biologist working on the aging and human longevity. The artificial intelligence, the word actually come from in 1956 at the Dartmouth Summer Research Project on Artificial Intelligence Conference. And since that time, the last half of the century, people's attention and interest in artificial intelligence have never been so high as they are now. Therefore, our panel will have an in-depth discussion on artificial intelligence today. So I would like to introduce our panel members first. As you have listened to the lecture just a moment ago, the famous professor, Muming Fu from University of Berkeley. Dr. Bin Yu, she is the leader of statistical machine learning and interdisciplinary research. Dr. Michael Ullman, he is also the expert in the research on the language and memory on using the functional MRI at Georgetown University. On my right side, Dr. Ichiro Takeuchi. But not the least, the Dr. Xiaogang Wang. We'll start the question for icebreaker. First of all, let's talk about just the huge event which you have just watched minutes ago on the historic, the 5-match game of between Isidore and the Google DeepMind AlphaGo computer program. So, Dr. Bin Yu, what do you think about why the AlphaGo has gained such a high intelligence within such a short time?
Well, I think actually it's the automation of human intelligence. I think a lot of the chess books, the strategies already encoded in the AlphaGo. So it's not like they're starting from scratch. So they already built in a lot of strategies. And with the computing power, they have much faster search than human can do. So you can see that they already embedded a lot of the training. I mean, when you have a kid learning play chess, they learn all the different layouts and strategies, and it's already stored, I think, in AlphaGo. At the same time, it has such a big search and speed that humans cannot match. I think that's the primary reasons. I remember I was visiting Uber before the match, and people asked me, what do you think would be the result? I wish the human won't be beaten, but I'm afraid he will. So I think I like the human to lead the way. But I think the AI people talk about, it's really a lot of automation of human intelligence. So it's not quite the same as what people think it is. It's using a lot of human knowledge and encoded in the computer. And that's why the edge, not just from nothing.
Okay. Dr. Ullman, what do you think about that? Do you have any different idea about the beauty in the human brain and machine?
Yeah, so I agree with Dr. Yu that in some situations, such as the success of AlphaGo, that there's a lot of built-in knowledge based on human knowledge combined with the power of very fast computational power and a lot of storage. But that's not always the case. So, for example, in a lot of the success of artificial intelligence, for example, in translation of languages, a very different computational approach is being used than humans use, where the human knowledge is actually, for the most part, in most of these successful translation systems, such as Google's and others, it's done in a very different way. So it's statistical pattern matching essentially between different languages using probably very, very different computational mechanisms than humans use for the same kinds of thing. So although in both cases there's a lot of power, the computational power that AI systems, computers have that we don't have, in some cases it's based on knowledge that's built in from humans. In other cases it's using a completely different strategy which may emerge from learning rather than being built in.
But even the translation, the Google translation, I think was still using human translated documents.
Correct, as the input.
Yeah, but so that's where it's like human intelligence for me, like still embedded in those systems.
Okay,
Right.
so before we go further, let's first define the human intelligence and artificial intelligence first. Would you please define these terms first?
Well, I would say I'll define the question first. The artificial intelligence means the artificial intelligence of today. Okay? The artificial intelligence of today is based on materials that are totally different from human intelligence. It's artificial, inert, uniform material that we made the chips, that implement the network calculation into this machine. But the human intelligence based on macromolecules, diverse macromolecules, proteins and nucleic acids, and very diverse molecules that are intrinsically unstable. Right? So it's a biological material that are used to build human intelligence. So I think on the basis, the material is different. Maybe in the future, biological molecule can be used for artificial intelligence, but that's far in the future.
So you emphasize that artificial intelligence today,
right,
the future will be totally different.
Yeah, it's totally different material, based on totally different material and construction. Actually, so far it's still silicon-based.
So at present, the artificial intelligence is based on the inert materials,
right,
but the human intelligence is based on the organic, the carbon-dependent, high
molecules.
Okay,
that's highly diverse.
Okay.
Actually, I have similar opinion about the definition of the artificial intelligence and human intelligence as Professor Pu. And let me discuss the distinction between those from the knowledge representation viewpoint. Since all AI system is implemented in digital computer, the knowledge that can be handled by artificial intelligence should be represented as a set of binary information in digital computer. So the important thing is that, which means that we can copy, reproduce, and store those knowledge. But on the other hand, we feel that human intelligence can also handle something implicitly defined, and maybe only in individual human brain. So we cannot copy them, and we cannot reproduce them. So that's a very important difference. So if we think in that way, maybe the progress of artificial intelligence is the process of making implicit knowledge into explicit. That would be the development of artificial intelligence.
Okay, so the difference between HI and AI is depending on the explicit and implicit knowledge.
Yes.
Okay, so if any other panelists, you have any other different ideas or different opinion about the HI and AI differentiation?
I feel like it's not a complete separation. I feel, as I said, the AI already built in human intelligence, just coded in the more different material, as Professor Poon was saying. So I really see it as a texture of things. There's a lot of connections. It's hard to just say they're two separate modes of definitions, but there's a lot of interaction.
Okay.
For me, I think it's perhaps less important is the underlying substrates, whether they're biological or physical, silicon-based or whatever, but rather back to what we were talking about before, the way that the learning and computation is carried out, whether it's carried out in a way that humans do or the way that computers do. To some sense, in some situations, the knowledge is built in, but that even in those cases, it's fundamentally different from humans who either have that innately or learn that based on that innate knowledge.
Okay. So you have any different idea?
Yeah, I think for artificial intelligence, it's mainly based on the if it's a machine and it's based on the computation models. So it has a greater flexibility to use different types of computation model. For example, artificial neural network, perhaps also graphical model, also integration of both. But for human, I think the mechanism is pretty much fixed. But the machine in the future probably has a larger flexibility. And if you look at the task they are working on, for example, on some tasks, for example, face recognition or playing the Go game, and the artificial intelligence could be much better than the human intelligence. But for some other tasks, for example, you create a new concept, the innovation at this stage, and the human much. So this artificial intelligence still could be much weaker.
Let's clarify some what the characteristics of the HI, which is quite a bit different from AI, and AI cannot obtain. What can you say, Dr. Ullman? You can say that AI cannot, obtain when compared with the HI. What's the characteristics?
Well, I'm not sure if I can make predictions about what AI cannot reach in the future. I think, in general, prediction is a very risky business. I think at the moment, though, there are quite a large number of different functions that human intelligence has an advantage over artificial intelligence, including some of the things that Dr. Pu mentioned, such as language, theory of mind, empathy, but even complex motor processing. Robots are still very limited, for example, in what they can do. So I think at this point, there's, even though maybe we have anticipation and perhaps fears as to what AI can do better than humans, right now it's a very, very limited set.
Okay. Dr. Pu, the media is they say that it's the extension of our 5 senses, and book is the extension of our eyes. Can you consider the artificial intelligence as an extension of our brain?
Sure. Why not? I mean, it's a tool that human use, so that's the extension of our human intelligence in a way. So I agree. It's an extension. The question would be how this future of the artificial intelligence will be. Maybe there are worries, which we might discuss later, that this artificial intelligence will develop to a stage that's no longer extension, that human become extension of the artificial intelligence.
Okay.
That's scary.
That's scary.
You have anything to say?
Yeah, for me, I think the human's unconscious mind might be the most difficult for artificial intelligence to produce. So I always see this as a collaboration, as extension, like it's a tool. Computer is a tool we extend. And for mature things like Go or whatever, we transfer our knowledge to the machine, and therefore I think every human can take advantage of that. But I hope that the most excellent humans will always lead the way. So I would think that never will be the other way around. But I think I won't live to see that day, so I'm safe.
Okay. Research on artificial intelligence had been slumped for a while. But with the drastic development of computers, the research had picked up its pace in many different fields of studies in the last decade. It's amazing the progress. While discussing the AI's abilities in object recognition, so specifically, through deep learning, people use an example of discerning a cat and dog. It's a very simple task for human, but for AI, it's very hard, they say. Why?
I think so if you look at the recent progress of deep learning, AI, in many major breakthrough come from deep learning. So this is data-driven. So it's totally rely on very large-scale data to train the model. And I think on some tasks, for example, in the object general image recognition, object recognition, and this machine already reaches the similar or even surpass the human performance. Or face recognition, based on our knowledge, I think is far beyond the human eyes performance on face recognition. And but this is, it's rely on huge amount of data, training data. But if you have some task, you present some new task, and which you don't have large scale training data, and so this is will be difficult for the machine. Okay. And I think this is mainly limited by the current computation model. It is based on the deep neural network. It's required large scale training. But for innovation, how to make it recognize the object recognition with the small data, that's still a challenge.
In connection to that question, actually, here we are many Koreans, Chinese, and Japanese, and it's very difficult to discern them. But the research team at the University of Rochester released that they developed the AI that can tell Chinese, Japanese, and Korean apart. What do you think of Dr. Takeuchi? Can you tell?
Okay, so I'm not that familiar with the work for differentiating the Chinese, Korean, and Japanese. But first, it is an artificial system, so it is implemented in digital computer. So at least the differentiation mechanism is explicitly spelled out as binary information. But now the problem is the distinction between about the interpretability. Now, like if the system is implemented in a very complex model, like a deep neural network, it is very difficult to interpret what deep neural net learns. So maybe that is one way to define the artificial intelligence. So based on the big data and machine learning algorithm development, we are able to obtain a lot of complicated models that are not easy to interpret. So we feel that kind of thing as an artificial intelligence because it is represented in a computer, but we cannot understand it. So we feel intelligence about that.
Dr. Yu, you have something to comment more about this?
Yeah, one thing I want to mention that all the claims made about different, like Korean and Chinese people be tear apart, it's very important to ask a question, which I haven't read. What were the data? Because I think what Xiao Gang was mentioning about, I think for very ambiguous situations, I would be very surprised artificial intelligence can beat human yet. So a lot of the database are made on relatively easy images. Right, so I think that's very important when you make these claims is how did they get the images? Like the people with clothes on or just the face? Or were they from China versus Korean or the people living? I think much harder to tell people who live in the US, Chinese and Korean and Japanese people apart because there's a culture influence. So I think that's why when you say things, it's easier, it's good to ask what data has been used. And it's kind of the big data design question in general. Okay. And I think without that, it's kind of these general claims can be too optimistic.
Yeah, so I would like to comment on that too. It's not a surprise to me with a large enough set of data with a Korean, Chinese face there to learn. You can predict with high accuracy based on the labeled samples. Right? So this is just a demonstration of large data set, the power of large data set.
Okay.
So I think the problem now is you're using pattern recognition, using deep learning network. Now we have reached the limit, right? You got much more accurate, better than humans. But it's such elaborate computing evolved. It's an inefficient way. I mean, human brain is much more efficient. You use a small sample size, very little power, you can get the answer, even though it may not be as accurate as the large data set prediction, right? So I think in the future, the real contest is to use a real simple, the efficient way, small samples to get your answer. Even though it may not be 97%, I mean 90% will be fine. If you are wanting to use 100 times less power and computing process. So I think that the deep learning network in terms of the ImageNet contest is modification upon a very complicated structure a small modification, incremental change. I think what's needed now for computing network is a basic change in architecture that's more human-like, more natural network-like.
Yes, okay.
Simple network. Yeah.
Next theme is I heard about the Japanese famous robot, the Pepper story, that the Pepper's robot's intelligence and the Pepper's ability to read the people's emotion based on the big data is enhancing rapidly. So how is this skill in reading emotions that even enable the robot to communicate with the people? What is it possible? How is it possible?
Well, I can't say whether robot can learn the emotion itself, and I don't know whether the Pepper succeeded that task or not. Actually, I have some experience with Pepper. Actually, a few weeks ago, I went to a cell phone shop, and Pepper-like robot was there, and he smiled at me, and he recommends to buy latest iPhone with the most expensive option, from which I don't feel any intelligence. But it is true that in Japan, in our country, many scientists are interested in humanoid robots and try to make them have emotion. When we talk with such kind of robot, make communication with such a robot for a short time, I feel lovely because they change some facial expression based on the type of conversation we have. But if we continue to talk for a long time, I start to feel bored because I noticed that he doesn't change conversation depending on the context. In other words, I feel that they are not interested in what I'm talking about. So, like if I talk long and if I talk about very deep things, then I still do not feel they have intelligence or emotion at the current stage.
This issue of emotion reading, can you tell anything about that, the possibility of the further?
We don't know in our neuroscience, present states of neuroscience, we do not know exactly where the emotion circuits, how they work. Right? So you can possibly simulate, produce a program in the computer or in robots that has the expression, has the outside behavior look like they have emotion, but that doesn't mean that they actually simulate human emotion. So they can react, they can have faces that show emotion, but are they operating in the same way as human emotion? That's hard to say.
And when we talk about the difference between HI and AI, another important aspect is subversive thinking. So, for example, after artists see the existing pieces of art, they can create a style that is which is totally different from the original. This is possible because we are capable of critical thinking. So we call this as creativity. So would you say that the ability to think critically on big data and creative subversive ideas based on big data is that the biggest characteristic of human intelligence different from AI?
I don't have much to say on that. I mean, I think one thing this reminded me of is the comment, if I understood correctly earlier, about a couple of people were talking about explicit versus implicit knowledge, and critical thinking, I think, for humans seems to implicitly include or refer to explicit capabilities. And I guess we have to be a little bit careful about that, and this goes also back to the previous issue, I think, of emotions. I think what it seems to me we can care about two different things. One is the performance, and the other is what's going on in terms of internal states. So in the case of emotions, for example, the performance may be there. So, for example, artificial intelligence machines may be able to detect facial expressions in terms of recognition of emotions, even if the way they're doing it is fundamentally different from how humans do it. And I think there's perhaps unknowable whether or not we will ever know whether the internal state is something akin to our emotions. In terms of critical thinking, whether the artificial intelligence in the long run may be able to perform the kinds of critical thinking, the performance that results from critical thinking, I think it's possible. It doesn't mean, again, and I've been repeating the same theme a couple of times, that they're doing it the same way. But I don't see a reason in principle why that wouldn't be attainable.
I think it would be a challenging task because I'm just leveraging my experience, try to kind of coach my students the critical thinking ability. And as an educator, I've been finding that extremely challenging. Like I can do on one-on-one, my top students have it, but I've been trying to see how to scale that up at the undergraduate level. I mean, for statistics, big data, I think what's missing in most of education is actually this quantitative critical thinking ability. Because a lot of times it's not automation. There's this creativity involved. And I find it that as an educator, that's been my challenge, how to do that large scale. So I can imagine that try to do that for machines would be even more challenging. Even pass from human to human, I think is very difficult because we don't even understand how I do it. I don't see how I do it.
Yeah. In your aspect, in neurobiological aspect,
so let's think how the human intelligence, how a person become more creative than others. Yeah. It's the experience. It's the neural network that's shaped by experience that's different. They can, given the same environmental stimulus, they react differently. They have a different decision to do different things. So I think if in the end, artificial intelligence and in the robots, they are in their network. They're actually a network that's adaptable, that can self-grow, that can change in response to the environment. Then we can evolve robots that have their own characters. They have more critical thinking than the others because their network is shaped by experience. So right now, one of the biggest problems of AI is that the AI is fixed. Right? You design it, you have a fixed architecture. The architecture doesn't change. You don't have adaptability to different environments.
Dynamic.
The dynamic. So once you have a dynamic artificial network, then you could create a situation that some robot would make more critical judgment, critical decisions because they have experienced that's different. Do you want that? That's another question. Yeah. But it is possible that if we have that dynamic, fixed, flexible, adaptable network, eventually we will create robots that are creative. Some more creative than others.
Yeah, I think one thing that I think it's important for us to remember also is that humans have the disadvantage of having both System 1 and System 2, to refer to Daniel Kahneman's terminology. In other words, we not only have this more rational, let's call it frontal lobe-based system, which allows us to do critical thinking, but also a more automatic and intuitive and often incorrect process that competes with that. And robots or artificial intelligence don't necessarily, they shouldn't have that built in like we have, and therefore they may have that advantage.
You think the two systems separate? I feel like for the best human, I like to think that a lot of the rational critical thinking is already embedded in the unconscious mind.
Right, and so
otherwise you cannot be very fast.
Right, so the whole notion of System 1 and System 2 is a little bit simplistic because there's lots of implicit processing going on.
Okay.
But this is one aspect.
So then we can summarize that the experiences matches the big data, the same meaning. The human experience matches the AI is big data. Is just the equal concept to you? Can you say?
AI at present uses big data, but AI could be the AI that could be evolved or be in the future will not need big data. But AI. There's a misconception that humans appear to make decisions quickly based on very small sample data. But the human brain is actually trained by big data. The network is trained by big data throughout the life, from early development. As I said, that the early network has been learning to deal with the environment. They already store all this capability in the network. That network now can do small data sets to make the right choice. So it's not that distinction.
Okay.
I think it's the network architecture and the basis for the network functions that accounts for difference.
Okay, it's actually the AI accelerates in development these days very rapidly. It is true that the AI may become a threat to human. We are very much worrying about it. To discuss on this, it is important to understand the difference between the characteristics of weak AI and strong AI.
So I think the weak AI is kind of we focus on some narrow range of tasks. For example, the object recognition, face recognition, and so this is already well defined. And you give the input, you expect what's the prediction of the output. Strong AI means that we hope the computer can have all the function of the humans. So basically, at the beginning, the people they think AI should pass. The goal was to pass a Turing test. So you have the person and another computer in a separate room. They cannot see each other and do the conversation. And if you cannot tell, if you're talking to a machine or a human, and then you pass the Turing test. So this is strong. So all the functions of humans.
Okay, then let's set aside the discussion on strong AI for a while. Then let's discuss the weak AI first. So people talk about the disappearance of jobs because of the weak AI. Actually, Lawrence Summers at Harvard University, he stated that in 1960, 1 out of 20 people between the age of 25 to 54 didn't work. But within 10 years, 7 out of 10 people would not work. What are the changes that to come in our lives?
I think actually a lot of the political situation in the US is not just outsourcing, and it's a lot of automation. I saw a figure, I don't know how reliable that is, that a robot on assembly line would cost only $7 an hour. You know, the US, the minimum age, now people pushing for $15 an hour. So I think that's something the AI community really need to think hard and put enough energy. It's just like any great things, usually there's also a downside. And as a responsible citizens, it would be good for the AI community to think about it, to know the impact until it really happens and realize, gosh, do we want that? And I think service industry, like emotions, I think that's an area maybe humans do better. So maybe we don't want to produce emotional reading robots, right? You leave some jobs to humans that just to realize there will be other societal problems if we're not careful, replacing jobs too fast.
I agree that certain types of jobs would be replaced by AI. But if we look back the history, the types of jobs are always constantly changing based on the technology that are available at that time. So for example, I work with a lot of biologists, and in the field of biology, what scientists and researchers were doing 30 years ago were totally different from what they are doing now, because the technological advancement in biology was enormous. And their job shifted to something that cannot be automated by technology. So optimistically, people would be able to find jobs that cannot be replaced by AI.
You are very optimistic.
Yeah.
Actually, when we look back our history, there are many jobs that didn't exist at the time of the Industrial Revolution, but this means that in different society in the future, there will be new jobs will be created. So in that case, besides jobs, what are the changes that AI will bring to the society?
I think probably in many aspects. Let's say just take an example as AlphaGo. And now we have a very strong computer, and actually our human can learn from the machines faster. And so this is initially the human learn from each other. Now you have the strong machine which can already summarize the knowledge from many people, and they play they're stronger. And our human actually we can learn faster in certain aspects. And also probably initially let's say our human may in early years we may focus on memorizing certain things or do the calculation. But now we have the machines. We also change our focus. We may more focus on other more creative things. So this could be how change on many aspects of the life.
Well, what will be the threatening factors of the AI to the society? Okay. Dr. Ullman, will you add some more?
I don't think we know. I think it's very difficult to predict that. And you can think about, I think perhaps two kinds of threats. One is the kind of threat that humans build into artificial intelligence, either directly or as a consequence of what they built in. So, for example, some machines which go off and do something that's unintended, let alone built in to actually harm humans. And a very different type of threat, which I think a lot of people confound with the first two, is some kind of intentionality or consciousness on the part of artificial intelligence along the lines of various science fiction scenarios. And I think that's something that's not certainly within the near future.
Okay.
But I do think that the former is possible.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, so I worry about the people's communication ability might deteriorate. So I talk about the communication with robot. If that kind of a robot is available in daily life, some people start to prefer to talk with robots, not to human being. For example, if the robot is well designed, they would not say something, you are angry, and they would not make them irritated, and they would not complain if I watch a soccer game in TV. So, I mean, the people would feel comfortable and more pleasant when they talk with robots. So, yeah.
Personally speaking, I don't remember any telephone number. And even my telephone number, I don't remember.
Okay.
So I'm dependent on the AI somehow. Okay, in the 2014, Stephen Hawking, the famous the scientist, Stephen Hawking stated that the development of full artificial intelligence could spell the end of human race. Do you agree?
No, I don't agree. I think any technology will spell the end of the human race if it used wrongly and improperly. Now, the appearance of atomic bomb it could destroy the human race many times over, right? But it hasn't happened yet. So any technology would face risk. It is the society that has to deal with it. There are many ethical issues that are created. So in the neuroscience, there's a field of neuro ethics. Right? So when you have a new technology that introduces that can modulate your brain, either pharmacologically or physically, what is the limit? Who has the power to do this? Who has the authority to change your brain? All these are neuroethical issues that the society has to deal with. Now, in the future, there will be ethical issues dealing with the development of AI, development of robots, intelligent robots. Now, so as far as we can see, and in the foreseeable future, the AI would help to improve the quality of lives, right? Improve the quality of human lives. So it's like the energy, nuclear energy, improve the production of energy for the Earth. But there's the danger that Steve Hawkins mentioned. That's always the danger. So that the society has to deal with it.
Yeah, I think for machine that has a issue is try to optimize something. Mm-hmm. So you have to set up this objective function, and so I think our human in the future should have some control on the machine to set up the right objective function. For example, if you simply try to apply this machine artificial intelligence to finance, and if your goal is only to get the benefit, right? So then there will be cause a problem. That's the only goal of the machine. But I think in the future, our humans should be able to control that, to add other objectives to train the machine in a better way.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you don't have any comment, then okay, please.
So one area hasn't been mentioned is actually precision medicine, where statistical machine learning algorithm you can call AI will be used. and there's huge amounts of data, and there are a lot of ethical and legal problems. But I think their potential damage could be huge, and the legal responsibility, who will take that? And personally, I get engaged because I think it's the responsibility of people like us to engage, so that personally, I don't want to be treated by a machine learning algorithm that I personally don't trust. Mm-hmm. So there, I think it's pushing, it's going big data, and I'm afraid that there will be some really serious disasters before we learn our lesson there.
So the responsibility and ethic issue is really very important for this progress of the AI further. Before we move into the next discussion, I would like to ask some audience or anybody who wanted to ask the questions to the panelists. Please stand up and identify yourself and notify to whom you are going to ask the questions. Please, if anybody. Oh, okay, please. Yeah.
So, hi, my name is Tae-sup Moon, and I'm in the Department of Information and Communication Engineering. So I want to ask a question to Professor Pu. So you mentioned several times about maybe the future way of AI is to have the ability to quickly generalize with only a small number of samples. Right? So in your opinion, what are the characteristics that enables the human beings to generalize really quickly to the new examples of the task? Do you think it's because humans can do the unsupervised learning very fast? The humans can do unsupervised learning very well, or do you think humans can quickly combine some already learned, supervised learned concepts? So what's your opinion?
Right, so I think the human neural network in the human brain has evolved during development. So it starts with like a random network in artificial network, right? It's a random network to begin with, but the learning process of human network have many features that the artificial network doesn't have. So during the learning process, the human network changes. Not only synaptic way, the connections are changed. They are pruned. The network is changing. They have dynamics in it. So the human network during development, evolve into a very efficient network, much more efficient than the deep learning network can give you. That would allow to give answer to small samples. You make right decisions. So that's the nature of learning process. It's inbuilt in the architecture principle of the network. So to proceed with AI, with brain-inspired AI, you have to think how the new human network got to their present state or be so effective. Right? You don't have to simulate every detail, but the principle, many principles can be incorporated.
Okay. Is there any other question or comments?
I'm undergraduate student of DGIST Young-Hoon Cho. I have a question about machine learning. What's the major difference between machine learning and human learning?
Yeah, so in machine learning, the source of the learning is the big data. So machine can handle a lot of big data very, very efficiently. But in human learning, we cannot handle a lot of big data in a very efficient way. Instead, maybe human use a lot of wider information than machine can handle. So the amount of the data and the efficiency would be the main difference of the human learning and the machine learning. This is my understanding.
Okay.
Can I comment on that?
Okay.
But I think one thing hasn't been mentioned is really the energy and resource use by machine learning and human, right? So that hasn't been compared.
Yeah.
We have machine learning, we have computer, huge energy consumption. And humans, it's biological, right? It's more in the ecosystem. So that hasn't been counted for.
Right. It's a very important
Yeah.
energy source, and the using of the big data is a big difference. Okay. So in our previous discussion, we have discussed about the difference between HI and AI, and in the difference is the implicit knowledge for HI and only the explicit knowledge to the AI. But it's only the AI at present status, but it will be changing, Dr. Fu suggested. But anyhow, the AI capacity will come up very rapidly to matching the human intelligence soon up. And when we're talking about the low AI applicability, we worried about the job market and job world. But that will be also we have very positive that there will be creation of new jobs in the near future. So, but anyhow, this social influence is so great that we needed a kind of a combination of the many different fields work together to prepare for the new world. So, in the next step, we would like to discuss on the future of AI. What will happen in the future of the AI itself. In 2013, a survey team, they suggested that AI will outsmart human by 2040.
Probably depends on which domain or which functions you're talking about. Right. So I think in terms of the flexibility and diversity of different abilities that we have, including what we might call cautiously general intelligence, which relates to explicit knowledge and the ability to use that knowledge in very diverse ways. I think that artificial intelligence is a very, very long way from attaining that kind of those kinds of abilities. But I think in terms of weak AI, I believe the term was, right, with very, very specialized functions such as winning a Go game, I think that many of these modules will be increasingly accomplished by artificial intelligence systems.
I think it depends on, we have lots of humans, right? So they're very different. So I think if you interpret outsmart humans as average humans, I think as said that probably weak AI, a lot of abilities, but I really think that for the very top human experts, I don't think AI can outsmart humans by 2014, probably every category.
Dr. Fu?
Yeah, I think 2040 is too close. I know. Yeah. It's far from there. Now, what do you mean by outsmart? Right? Yeah. So you have to have a definition. So let's imagine a Turing test for outsmart, to test how smart people are. So let's say we have a machine or a robot sitting among our panels. We have debate, right? So a machine has to debate. They have to change their arguments. They have to look at the expression of the other debate, the people, and react properly. Now, if the machine can win the debate among a group of politicians,
okay,
then we might say they outsmart.
I'm not sure that's intelligence, though.
What is your idea about?
The top politician cannot lose the debate with the machine. Yeah. Well, no, even the Turing test has not been passed yet, right? So the latest Turing test is that you have 3 minutes to converse with the machine and decide whether it's machine or human. That's 3 minutes. If I have 10 minutes or 30 minutes, I'll put a smart question that the machine cannot answer because the machine doesn't understand language. Right? Well, there are many languages. The tricks of language, double meanings, all this easily outsmart machine. Right? Okay. So even Turing test after 60 years has not been passed. Right? So I say there's a long way to go before a machine can outsmart a person.
We are worrying too much.
Right.
Yeah. So what?
Yeah. So many current AI successful AI system is built on the human experience or knowledge. Mm-hmm. For example, the success of AlphaGo is highly dependent on the data that are obtained from the matches between human experts. So in that sense, in order to overcome humans' ability, there is still another gap, I think.
Yes, I think on some tasks, machine already outperform the humans. Doing better than the human recognition in face. But so for there are still also many other tasks. There's a long way to go. And also, if we talk about machine learning, you have to first define the problem mathematically, formulate this. But I think many of the problems we still don't know how to formulate them yet.
So the reason that I asked all of the members is the outsmarting human is a big issue. It's very sensational in 2040. But today I'm very happy that you are not so agree with that kind of ideas in some part only.
A short comment. We all talk about how machine win over Master Lee. But the machine didn't do it. It's another person sitting opposite Master Lee helping to put the pieces. The machine can only calculate the move.
Okay.
All to win the game, they need a human help.
So when we discuss the future of AI, it is impossible to skip our discussion on sci-fi movies. The Terminator, you see, the famous movie. The Terminator attacked the people because he obtained self-consciousness, they say in the movie. Consider this happen in the future? Can it happen? They have a self-consciousness?
I can answer that.
Yeah.
We don't know what self-consciousness is. So we say well, a baby has a self-consciousness if the baby can look at a mirror and recognize herself. That's self-conscious, a sign of self-consciousness. Now we can eventually produce a machine that can self-recognize in the mirror. But the way it does it, maybe there will be internal workings some way that we can program it to do that. Well, can you claim that self-consciousness? Maybe by definition, by operational definition, it's self-consciousness because they recognize themselves in the mirror. But it's a different way from human self-consciousness because it's a totally different architecture.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. We don't understand even going beyond self-consciousness just to consciousness and free will, right? We don't understand these at all right now. In fact, as some people are aware here, there is even a controversy as to whether free will exists or not. There's evidence from some neuroscience experiments that suggests that the brain is actually making a decision before we are aware of that decision being made that we attribute to our consciousness. So in fact, we may not even have free will. Now, if that's the case, of course, then maybe it's easy for artificial intelligence to have free will because there is no free will. Okay. So it's just a consequence of prior decisions and prior inputs.
Okay. Historically, lasted many years, history, when we looked at our history, the humans have successfully adapted themselves to the cultural and technical advances by cultivating our intellectual ability toward better suitable directions. So we are obliged to coexist with the AI. It's inevitable. We have to coexist with the AI. So in this case, we must find a way to complement both the HI and AI with each other. And what could be the solution for that?
I think the most fundamental is actually our education system. I mean, we always coexisted with certain levels of AI for the last few decades. But right now, it seems maybe there's a quantum jump with all the emphasis and energy put into computer resource and the hype on AI or big data. So the important thing is to basically teach students learn how to learn. I think that's the most important for education. It's not just particular knowledge, right? When I started graduate school, we're teaching students to how to punch to do regression. Right now, they know the concept. Some of them still know. Most of them just press a button and use it. But so what's the value of human? It's really for a new task. And so education becomes just an example to show something can be learned, but the goal is for them to have the confidence when they leave the university, they can learn anything they put their mind to. So that's and have seen it before, so they can do it on their own. Okay. Then I think we'll have a very resilient.
So you emphasize the education. And what else?
Yeah, I also agree. I think just like we need to teach and educate our kids, we also need to have some control on these machines and to set up certain rules to set up the proper objective function for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. As AI develops, the field of its application will expand as well. So in this circumstance, what are the abilities that human must develop? what kind of abilities that we needed to prepare to confront the AI development?
Well, I think human will evolve with the appearance of more advanced AI. Like the kids today have already much better playing with computer with keyboards than the older generation. Right? So there are ability as time goes by. The human capability will change in terms of cognitive ability, motor activity. Those will happen. Right.
So, Dr. Ullman?
Yeah, I agree. And sort of to put the 2 points together, I think that we will learn to interact with machines just like we always have in the past. And I think that human intelligence, one of the hallmarks, the characteristics of human intelligence, is in fact this flexibility. I think that a lot of the education that has to occur is going to occur implicitly in the way that children are learning to interact with machines. It'll be interesting. Just like with our president, it'll be interesting.
But I think one thing we have to make sure children also interact with other humans, not just with machines.
Okay. So some say that AI should be developed to adopt augmented intelligence, which will allow AI to consult and support humans in value judgment and decisions. What are your thoughts on augmented intelligence? Dr. Wang?
I think in the currently the machine mainly taught by the humans. We have the data, we do the annotations, and we teach these teacher machines. And I think at some point, it's on some task when it has a similar or even better performance than our human beings. And the big question is, how about in the future, how we can further improve the performance?
You already conducted research on the AI enhanced visual recognition capabilities.
Right.
So how much development can AI achieve in the future?
Yeah, I think at least the point it reached the bottleneck. Basically, we in the visual recognition, we train the machine based on the human annotated images or videos. But I find that on some tasks, they already have similar performance than human. And then you continue to provide this human annotated data to teach the machine. It's hard for them to get further improvement. But I think in the future, this machine already grown up, and it has to explore the world by itself, like a robot, and it can interact with the environment and to get feedback from environment, not only passively receive the information from humans. And that's probably one of the direction we can further improve the AI.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in some aspects, AI has already outpaced some of the human capabilities. However, empathy, the creativity, and value judgment remain as humans' unique characteristics, at least at present. Should a human further develop and strengthen these traits?
Well, the human has not evolved, has been evolved slowly. I mean, we are no smarter or no more intelligent than Aristotle 1,000 years ago. But our environment is different now. So we have used the same capability to deal with the new environment. But the biological mechanism for the human brain has not changed. Right? So I would say that in the future, this is what is going to happen. The human brain would adapt again to the new environment with AI, advanced AI, in a way that we have adapted to many other technological change. Right? So there's no need for, I guess there would be creativity or growth of so-called intelligence that would deal with this particular environment. That doesn't mean that we have changed our brain structure that much. So I think we can, if we want to say, to facilitate next generation to be more adaptive to this environment. That's probably the part of education that can perform, right? So that they do not, they can adapt better than without this education. Right?
Okay. I totally agree with the opinion of Professor Pu. So the human unique ability is to be able to adapt to any environment. The environment where artificial intelligence and human intelligence coexist. That would be the unique characteristics of human. So I'm always optimistic about this.
We previously set aside the discussion on the strong artificial intelligence, and should we be threatened by the development of strong artificial intelligence? Duang, can you say?
Yes, I think people are targeting on that, and to have so that this computer can have all these kind of functions and performed by human beings. So this is our target.
Well, I actually think that it's a long way away for the strong intelligence, AI. But I think this discussion also we need to bring in our social scientists colleagues. And the moral, it should be a much broader field than just the science end of things.
Eric Horvitz at the Microsoft Research Lab, he led the big project, the 100-year study on artificial intelligence. He is conducting a research on 18 different subjects, such as the direction of AI, privacy, democracy, law, ethics, economics, war, safety, psychology, and philosophy, and so on. He states that it is necessary to gain control in AI. How would we continue to keep our control of AI? Dr. Pu, now we can say some about the control or ethics or what?
So as we have just talked about, the development of AI, like development of medicine and neuroscience, has to be much more broad-based and involve other fields. We have to chart our future together. Right? That needs to be. So in this particular case, we need to control how AI, the direction of AI. Now you could be assisting, facilitate our lives, increase the quality of our lives, but it could also hurt us in some way. How do we use those robots, for example? The robots could be very useful for helping autistic kids to gain the social ability gradually before they interact with humans. Right? There are things that one can design. There are robots that perform surgery for you more precisely now. These are the things useful, but we need ethical discussions. More and more ethical discussions that involve many disciplines.
So usually in the life science, when the recombinant technology come up first,
right,
then we had a kind of a moratorium, for biological researches. So do you think that in this occasion, in artificial intelligence, we need to have a new campaign for moratorium, something like that?
I think in the future it will have happened, but right now the robot is so rudimentary, that's not a problem. Right? But in 20, 30 years, maybe there's increasing need for a control or for ethical regulation about some development. Well, there's already in neuroscience, there are already problems. Right? People are now selling small devices that can stimulate your brain, supposedly, to enhance your memory. But those things are unsafe. For many of those are just not scientifically based. So those need regulation as well. Right? So there are things like that. But I think as far as the artificial intelligence is concerned at this moment, it provides also benefit to society. That's for sure. The dangers is looming in the future.
You talked about augmented intelligence.
Okay.
That concept would be very important for this kind of story. So maybe AI system can be used to support the decision making by human being. So at some point, in order to control things, human being must interrupt in order to make a decision or final decision making. So we need to perhaps think about that kind of rule. At which point humans should make a decision.
Okay.
Yeah, I think one important point, we need to understand what's going on in AI. So we cannot treat this as a black box. And currently, it sounds like that. You have network. So in some area, for example, this AI is outperformed if it have more computation capability, more outperformed than humans. And if we cannot understand what's going on, that will be a risk.
Okay, so about AI, we should be alert, at least at this moment. But about such kind of a moratorium is not yet. We have to be alert on the AI development, the direction of the progress.
Right.
Okay, so let's talk about a little more realistic application of AI. It's at court, AI makes the 80% accuracy, and Watson, developed by IBM, diagnosis cancer for patients. In which industry will AI will be most actively applied?
Yeah, I think many still areas we still have a lot of space to explore. Yes, for example, in the medical, and we actually the people have a lot of data, medical imaging, medical analysis, but that we just haven't made better use of it, better organize such data. I think robotics and in these areas and in the future, I can see a fast increase.
Yeah, so I'm interested in how AI could be used for scientific discovery. So, for example, the researchers in biology first make experimental design, doing experiment, see the result, and doing experimental design again and again. So that kind of process can be perhaps automated by artificial intelligence. Also, if it succeeds, we have a risk to lose our job as a scientist or
the machine could write the paper,
could
research for us.
Yeah, terrible story.
Yeah.
Dr. Ullman,
Well, one thing that would be, it's fun to think about and perhaps useful is think of it in a kind of circular way, which is artificial intelligence to help understand intelligence, both human and artificial intelligence, as a tool. And of course, that's happening already in our field as neuroscientists and cognitive psychologists, but I think that would be, it's a nice way of thinking about it in a kind of this circular feedback way.
Okay, so when we heard about this, the progress of AI and the future of AI, the research on AI has been more active than ever. But how about the human AI? What kind of research will be directed in the next future?
Well, certainly, the understanding of human intelligence is the ultimate goal of brain science or neuroscience. We are very, only the beginning. Right? I mentioned the 3 levels of cognitive process, which is the best science of intelligence. We are only at the studying of how human brain recognizes the cognition of the outside world. That's our present status. In order to really understand human intelligence, you have to know how the human knows himself, know the self from non-self, know the theory of mind ability, and also the language. The ultimate goal is the language. If we understand how human produce language, then that's the ultimate understanding of the human intelligence.
I have some personal question too. Because I'm working on aging and human longevity, my personal question is on the AI progress is whether AI can be the solution for human neurodegeneration, such as Alzheimer's or Parkinson's or sarcopenia, whatever. AI can be a solution for the...
Right. So AI could be used in many medical devices that help to prevent or slow down the degeneration process. Now, we don't have a good medical treatment therapy for neurodegeneration. It seems to be a process like going down. The cells are dying, the network is dysfunctioning with time. Right? So to prevent that, one way is that we can use AI-assisted stimulation, physiological stimulation programs that help to enhance specific functions. Now, they help the design of treatment methods that would slow down, that would help to slow down the degeneration process. I think that's the best hope.
So you're hopeful and optimistic for its application. What would be the form of the AI technology to the human beings? Whether it's as a form of robots, or form of wearables, or form of just implanting into the brain? Which form do you use?
There are all kinds. There are physical, the type of stimulation, non-invasive, or even invasive, right? So one can imagine a very sophisticated program that when you do deep brain stimulations or for Parkinson's disease, what's the best parameter? How much to stimulate depends on how your behavior is. You have a sophisticated algorithm to compute what parameters to stimulate. Those are that would help. AI would help to develop those tools. But there are also softwares. I personally feel the physiological internet-based, video-based stimulation of the brain is the programs are well designed based on scientific principle to stimulate specific function of your brain. Okay. That would probably will require AI assistance.
Rather than the direct stimulation, is a kind of indirect stimulation.
Physiological stimulation.
Okay. Well, at this moment, I would like to ask the floor of the audience to ask some questions or comments. Is anybody? Please.
I'm Hyunhae. I'm from the Department of Brain and Cognitive Sciences. And first of all, thank you for sharing your great ideas with us. It's really amazing, and I loved it so much. I would like to ask Dr. Ullman, so what do you think about the relationship between AI and embodied cognition? Or do you think it's necessary for AI to have embodied cognition in the future?
Thank you for the question. So embodied cognition is the idea that our cognitive abilities depend on parts of the brain or the mind that underlie particular aspects that are tied to sensory or motor systems. So, for example, that our conception of a cat would be tied to the visual system of a cat that represents a cat, or that our representation of a hammer is tied both to the visual perception of a hammer as well as the actual motor action of using a hammer. And there's increasing evidence that our own cognitive abilities depend on these kinds of this kind of system. I guess this goes back to what I've been saying a couple of times during this panel, which is that if the goal of artificial intelligence simply to be able to accomplish certain behaviors, then no, that's probably not necessary, and it can be accomplished in different ways. There are probably multiple ways of accomplishing particular behaviors that are different from humans as well as similar to humans. If our goal is to try to emulate humans, then it might be more important to do so.
Thank you. Any further questions from the audience? Okay, please.
Yeah, I have one more question about this social regulation on the usage of AI. So, for example, this object detection technology, it can be used for self-driving cars and become really good application for human beings. But also, it can be used by terrorists to develop automatic shooting machine or something like that. So, do you think we can really regulate that kind of usage of AI? What would be the way of really? I mean, we can talk with social scientists, but can we make law to really regulate those kind of usage, or is there any? What are your thoughts on those kind of problems?
I don't really know, but I can add more comments on that. Not really the answer. Mm-hmm. I'll give you another example. Is face recognition, and face recognition developing technology is already applied to finance, the ATM machine, these things. And on the other hand, there are also a bunch of researchers. The people also develop technology can simulate the human faces. You're using the fake face or the face videos to cheat the machines. I think all the technology have two sides. And sometimes they compete with each other. So I don't know really the solution that, but it is an issue.
Okay, actually that issue is very difficult to answer by us, and we have to interact with some social groups and about that. So actually through our discussion, I'm just a newcomer to this field and totally unfamiliar area of this AI, but I was really feel like that I had some glimpse of the future AI. So lastly, I would like to hear about how you feel about this discussion today, but one by one. So shall you start?
Yeah, I think today I also learned a lot from this our discussions, and I think for me, I think AI is still as the young stage, and also recently it's developed fast. It's mainly driven by the big data and high computation power. But I think in the future, there's still many ways to do the further improvement to make it really even outperform our humans in certain aspects, and to also stimulate some functions of the human beings.
Yeah, so at the beginning of this panel discussion, Professor Wu declared that we are going to discuss the current stage of AI. So what I feel through the discussion is that the concept of AI is changing through time. So as a researcher who does something related to AI researches, we need to show people, at least in the near future, what AI can do and what AI cannot do for making it public. Yes. Okay.
I think for the development of AI, this is a critical time because the interest and the power of deep learning has reached the saturation or the end. So you need a breakthrough. I think the next breakthrough would come with a total change in architecture. So far, the current neural network or computing algorithm is an old architecture with more layers and more connections, making it more complicated, and then use big data to perform. So the future would be a rethinking about the architecture of the neural network. Make it simplify, the efficiency of the network is the key, rather than the final performance, right? Rely on big data. I think that, and this is the main problem. The computing algorithm, the machine learning algorithm, is the key for future AI. Right? It's the basis for all the hardwares and robots. If there's no breakthrough there, making this neural network multitasking, can perform multitask, more general, you will have no general intelligence or strong intelligence.
Yeah, I also very enjoy hearing the different people from different fields on this panel. And I think, as Professor Pu alluded to, the architecture chain dynamic feature of deep learning has come, but for the deep learning, as we know, it also needs some theoretical understanding of what's going on. Empirical performance is there, but we really don't understand very well, or to really teach in a deep learning class that just run the algorithm. So I think there should be some mathematical development to have a concise description. As a field, I think AI needs to evolve into a multidisciplinary field. With all the questions we talk about, there should be conscious effort for the leaders of AI to really think it as a multidisciplinary field, not just engineering.
Thank you. Dr. Ullman?
I think following up on some of the same thoughts, first of all, I learned a lot, and it's also become clear to me just how little we understand, not just of artificial intelligence, but of course, closer to my own bailiwick, human intelligence. And I think that if we want to constrain and use our understanding of human intelligence for advances for artificial intelligence, we have to understand human intelligence much better. And I think one of the things that needs progress is linking together the knowledge that there have been a lot of advances in neuroscience, but that hasn't been successfully linked yet to higher level cognition. So the kinds of things that we've heard about are basically applying even the cell assembly types of things that you talked about. We still don't understand how exactly that works, even for simple concepts, let alone for higher level cognition. So we have a lot of understanding or more and more understanding of the underlying neural substrates of human intelligence that have to underlie it somehow. It's not the liver, it's the brain, but we don't understand how that underlies this much more complex cognition that is really what we care about for AI.
Okay, thank you very much. Today, we have discussed the present and the future of AI, and we have learned a lot of things. Still, there are many gaps, and also what the amazing things are coming. But I feel like that we have to be alert to keep the things going right direction. Okay, so the American writer William Gibson said, "The future is already here. It's just not very evenly distributed." However, it seems like the proposition will soon need to be changed to the future is already here and it is well distributed. So we may be standing right at the corner. Once we turn, we might have the future that is completely transformed from the present status where we are and dreaming the future. I conclude the panel discussion. Thank you very much, all the panelists, and thank you very much for all the audience. Thank you.